In the city of Savannah, Georgia, Laura and David Carter lived what appeared to be an ideal life. David was a successful businessman who had recently sold a portion of his chain of wine stores for a substantial amount of money. Laura was a dedicated housewife, fully committed to raising their two children and taking care of their home. Their residence was a beautiful house, located in the historic district of the city, an area known for its charm and elegance. David's success in business allowed the Carters to enjoy a comfortable and affluent lifestyle. He was well known in the community, not only for his business acumen, but also for his generosity and involvement in local events. The sale of part of his business had brought in a significant sum, which only added to their financial security. This success was a source of pride for Laura, who often marveled at how far they had come since their early days together. David had grown up in a modest household. His father worked as a mechanic, and his mother was a schoolteacher. From a young age, David showed a keen interest in entrepreneurship. He started his first small business in college, selling handcrafted wine accessories. His business acumen grew, leading him to establish a chain of wine stores across Georgia. Over the years, David's hard work and determination paid off, turning him into a prominent figure in the local business community. His reputation was built on his integrity and a keen sense of market trends. Laura, on the other hand, had a different upbringing. She came from a family that valued education and community service. Her parents were both doctors, and they instilled in her a strong sense of responsibility and care for others. Laura met David during a charity event in college, where she was studying social work. Drawn to his ambition and charm, Laura quickly fell in love. After graduating, she chose to focus on building a family with David, putting her career aspirations on hold. Laura took great pride in her role as a homemaker. She had always believed in creating a warm and nurturing environment for her family. Their children, Emily and Jacob, were the center of her world, and she dedicated herself to ensuring they had everything they needed. Emily, a bright and curious 8-year-old, loved to read and was deeply interested in animals. Jacob, who was 6, was energetic and loved sports, particularly soccer. From school activities to home-cooked meals, Laura's attention to detail and love for her family were evident in everything she did. Their home was often the site of gatherings and social events. David and Laura loved to host parties, inviting friends and colleagues to enjoy their hospitality. These events were always well attended and talked about, as the Carters were known for their graciousness and the lively atmosphere they created. The historic house, with its classic architecture and well-manicured garden, provided the perfect backdrop for these gatherings. The house itself had a rich history, having been built in the early 1900s. Laura had always been proud of her marriage. She believed that she and David had a relationship that many envied. They had been together for over a decade, supporting each other through the highs and lows of life. David's business achievements and Laura's dedication to their family had made them a respected and admired couple in their community. They were often seen as a model family, embodying the values of hard work, love, and mutual respect. To outsiders, their life seemed perfect. David's success in business, Laura's commitment to their family, and their active social life painted a picture of an ideal marriage. They had financial security, a beautiful home, and a close-knit family. Laura often reflected on how fortunate they were to have such a strong and loving relationship. She believed that their bond was unbreakable and that they would continue to thrive together. The pressures of maintaining their lifestyle and the demands of David's business were starting to take a toll. Laura noticed small changes in David's behavior, but dismissed them as the result of stress from work. She trusted him completely and had no reason to suspect that anything was amiss. The future seemed bright, and Laura held on to the belief that their perfect life would continue indefinitely. Recently, Laura began to notice changes in David's behavior. He often stayed late at work and had become more secretive and nervous. These changes did not go unnoticed by Laura, who had always prided herself on knowing her husband well. The once open and communicative David now seemed distant, preoccupied with matters he was unwilling to share. One day, while tidying up David's home office, Laura came across a receipt for expensive jewelry that she had never received. This discovery planted a seed of doubt in her mind. Laura could not recall any recent occasion that would warrant such a lavish gift, and the fact that she had never seen the jewelry made her suspicious. This initial suspicion led Laura to start noticing other small, yet unsettling details. There was the unfamiliar scent of another woman's perfume on David's clothes, something that was unmistakable and out of place. David had also started receiving sudden phone calls, which he would take in another room, speaking in hushed tones. These behaviors were new and troubling, far removed from the open and honest relationship they had always shared. He frequently claimed to be working late or attending business meetings, yet his explanations often seemed vague and unconvincing. He seemed to brush off her worries, attributing his behavior to the pressures of work and the recent changes in his business. Despite David's reassurances, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She found herself replaying their interactions in her mind, looking for clues that might explain David's odd behavior. The perfume, the late nights, the secretive phone calls. All of these elements combined to create a picture that Laura found increasingly difficult to ignore. Her anxiety grew with each passing day. The idea that David might be hiding something significant gnawed at her constantly. Laura's mind raced with possibilities, none of them comforting. She began to feel isolated, unable to share her suspicions with friends or family for fear of appearing paranoid or accusatory without concrete evidence. As she continued to observe David's actions, Laura resolved to find out the truth. She knew that confronting him directly without solid proof might lead to denial or further deception. Instead, she decided to gather more information, hoping to uncover the reasons behind David's troubling behavior. One day, when David left for a business trip, Laura seized the opportunity to investigate his personal belongings. David's office at home was usually a space Laura respected, but now it felt like a place where answers could be found. With determination and a heavy heart, she began her search. She meticulously went through his desk drawers, file cabinets, and shelves, looking for anything that might explain his recent actions. As she rifled through papers and documents, she couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that had settled deep within her. The breakthrough came when she decided to check his laptop. David had always been protective of his digital devices, which only heightened Laura's suspicions. She knew his passwords, something they had shared in a gesture of trust and transparency. Now, that trust was being put to the test. With trembling hands, she opened his laptop and began to search through his files and emails. It didn't take long for Laura to find what she was looking for. In his email inbox, she discovered a series of correspondences with a young employee from his office, Emma Miller. The emails were intimate and detailed, discussing not only work-related matters, but also personal topics. They spoke of shared moments, joint trips, and future plans. The tone of the messages was affectionate and familiar, far beyond the bounds of a professional relationship. As Laura read through the emails, her heart sank. The reality of David's betrayal was laid bare in front of her. The man she had trusted implicitly, the father of her children, was having an affair. The emails painted a picture of a relationship that was not a mere fling, but a deeply involved connection. Laura felt a mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief. How could he do this to their family? How long had this been going on? Her search didn't end there. Fueled by a need to confirm the betrayal, Laura dug deeper. She found a folder on the laptop containing photos of David and Emma together. They were taken in various locations, some of which David had claimed were business trips. The images showed them in intimate poses, smiling and enjoying each other's company. Each photograph was a stab to Laura's heart, confirming the extent of David's infidelity. Laura sat in David's office, surrounded by evidence of his betrayal, feeling utterly devastated. The life she had known, the marriage she had believed in, was shattered. She felt lost and unsure of what to do next. The betrayal was too profound to simply confront David and demand an explanation. She needed time to think and plan her next steps. In the midst of her despair, Laura remembered the safe where David kept the money from the sale of part of his business. The substantial sum of money had been a topic of discussion between them, a symbol of their financial stability and future security. With a newfound sense of purpose, Laura decided to take the money from the safe. She knew the combination, a detail David had shared without hesitation, never imagining she would one day use it to leave him. As she opened the safe and saw the stacks of cash, she felt a mix of guilt and determination. This money would be her lifeline, the means to create a new life for herself and her children. Laura took $100,000 from the safe, carefully placing it in a bag. She knew she had to leave before David returned from his trip. There was no turning back now. The betrayal had destroyed any chance of reconciliation. She needed to protect herself and her children from the fallout of David's actions. With the money secured, Laura began to plan her departure, determined to rebuild her life free from the shadow of David's infidelity. Laura decided it was time to confront David directly. The weight of his betrayal and the evidence she had found were too much to bear alone. When David returned from his business trip, she was ready. David walked through the door, looking tired, but unaware of the storm awaiting him. Laura had spent the past few days preparing for this moment, replaying the confrontation in her mind. She had rehearsed what she would say, how she would present the evidence, and how she would handle his reactions. Laura waited until David had settled in before she approached him. She asked him to sit down, her tone calm but firm. David, sensing the seriousness in her voice, complied, though a hint of confusion crossed his face. Laura took a deep breath and began. "I need to talk to you about something important, David," she started, her voice steady. "I found some things while you were away." David's confusion turned to mild concern. "What are you talking about, Laura?" Laura reached for the folder containing the printed emails and photographs she had discovered. She placed it on the table in front of him, her hands trembling slightly. "I found these," she said, opening the folder to reveal the incriminating evidence. David's eyes widened as he saw the contents. He quickly flipped through the pages, his face growing pale. "This isn't what it looks like," he stammered, his voice filled with panic. "I can explain." Laura felt a surge of anger. "Don't lie to me, David. The emails, the photos, they tell the whole story. You've been having an affair with Emma." David's initial denial crumbled under the weight of the evidence. He slumped back in his chair, a look of defeat on his face. "Okay. Yes," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I had an affair. But it was a mistake, Laura. It didn't mean anything. I was stressed and things just happened. Please, don't let this destroy our marriage." Laura's heart ached at his words. She had loved David deeply, trusted him completely, and now that trust was shattered. "You betrayed me, David," she said, her voice breaking. "You lied to me, to our children. How can I ever trust you again?" David reached out to her, desperation in his eyes. "Please, Laura, we can work through this. I promise I'll end it with Emma. We can go to counseling, do whatever it takes to fix this. Don't throw away everything we have." Laura pulled back, unable to bear his touch. "It's too late for that, David. You've already thrown it all away. I can't stay in a marriage built on lies." David's face contorted with emotion. "Laura, please. Think about the kids, about our life together. Don't leave." But Laura had made up her mind. The pain of his betrayal was too deep, and she knew she couldn't forgive him. "I'm leaving, David. I can't live like this." With those words, Laura stood up and walked to the bedroom, where she had packed her bags earlier. David followed her, pleading and begging. But she remained resolute. She took the bag containing the $100,000 from the safe, knowing it was her ticket to independence and a new life. As she walked out of the house, David's pleas grew more desperate. "Laura, please, don't do this. We can fix it." But Laura didn't look back. She got into her car and drove away, tears streaming down her face. The life she had known was over, and a new, uncertain future awaited her. The money she had taken would provide for her and the children, giving her the means to start fresh. As she drove through the streets of Savannah, Laura felt a mix of relief and sorrow. She was leaving behind a life of comfort and familiarity, but also one marred by betrayal and pain. Upon discovering the missing money, David was consumed with rage. The $100,000 Laura had taken represented not only a significant financial loss, but also a direct challenge to his control and authority. This loss of control, coupled with the public humiliation of his affair becoming known, pushed David to the brink. David's behavior became increasingly erratic and dangerous. He started following Laura, showing up unexpectedly at places she frequented. He would call her repeatedly, leaving threatening messages and blaming her for the collapse of their life and his business. His once composed demeanor was replaced by a volatile and menacing presence that left Laura in a constant state of fear. Laura, trying to rebuild her life and provide a sense of normalcy for their children, became more cautious and vigilant. She changed her daily routines, informed close friends and family of the situation, and took steps to ensure her safety. Despite her efforts, the relentless stalking and harassment from David wore her down. One fateful night, Laura returned to their former home to collect some remaining personal belongings. She had arranged for a friend to accompany her, but at the last minute, her friend was unable to make it. Determined to get it over with, Laura decided to go alone. As Laura entered the house, she felt an eerie silence. She quickly moved through the rooms, gathering her things, hoping to leave as soon as possible. However, David had anticipated her visit. When Laura entered the living room, David emerged, blocking her path. The sight of him, disheveled and seething with anger, sent a wave of terror through her. David accused her of ruining his life, blaming her for everything that had gone wrong. As Laura tried to calm him and explain her actions, David's fury reached a breaking point. In a blind rage, he attacked her, his violent outburst fueled by months of pent-up anger and humiliation. Laura tried to defend herself, but David's assault was relentless. He grabbed a glass decanter from the table and struck 5 blows to the head. Laura was lying lifeless on the floor. Realizing the gravity of what he had done, David panicked. To cover up the murder, he hastily staged the scene to look like a robbery. He ransacked the house, overturning furniture and scattering belongings to create the appearance of a break-in. He took some valuables and fled, hoping the staged robbery would divert suspicion away from him. However, the hastily concocted plan was far from foolproof. David's erratic behavior had not gone unnoticed by neighbors and friends. The police, upon arriving at the scene, quickly discerned that the evidence did not align with a typical robbery. There were signs of a struggle between Laura and her attacker, and David's fingerprints were found in places that suggested his presence during the crime. The ransacked house, though convincing at first glance, did not align with typical burglary patterns. Valuable items were left untouched, and there were clear signs of a struggle between Laura and her attacker. As the investigation unfolded, the police meticulously gathered evidence. Forensic teams analyzed the scene, finding David's fingerprints and DNA in places that indicated his presence during the crime. Blood spatter analysis also suggested a violent altercation rather than a random robbery. These findings quickly shifted the focus from an unknown burglar to someone much closer to Laura. Neighbors and friends provided crucial testimony. Many had heard the loud and heated arguments between Laura and David in the weeks leading up to her death. Some had even witnessed David stalking and harassing Laura after she left him, adding weight to the theory that this was a premeditated act of violence rather than a spontaneous crime. David's increasingly unhinged behavior had not gone unnoticed. His erratic actions, from the relentless stalking to the menacing phone calls, painted a clear picture of a man on the edge. Under mounting pressure from the accumulating evidence and the testimonies of those who knew the couple, David's facade of innocence began to crumble. Faced with the reality of his actions and the inevitability of his conviction, David confessed to the murder. He admitted that his rage and humiliation had driven him to the unthinkable act of killing Laura and attempting to cover it up. The confession, though providing a sense of closure, did little to ease the sorrow and anger felt by those who knew and loved Laura. The community was left reeling from the revelation that a seemingly successful and respected businessman could commit such a heinous act. David's trial was a grim affair, dominated by the harrowing details of Laura's murder and the emotional testimonies of those affected by her death. The prosecution presented a compelling case outlining David's motive, the premeditated nature of the crime, and the overwhelming evidence against him. The defense, unable to refute the concrete evidence and David's own confession, could do little to mitigate the severity of the charges. In the end, David was found guilty of first-degree murder. The judge, in handing down the sentence, spoke of the profound breach of trust and the devastating impact of David's actions on his family and community. David was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring he would spend the rest of his days behind bars. In the aftermath, efforts were made to honor Laura's memory. Initiatives were launched to support victims of domestic violence, and community programs were established to promote healthy relationships and provide resources for those in need. Laura's life, though tragically cut short, inspired positive change and a renewed commitment to protecting those at risk. David Carter was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and he was assigned to serve his sentence at the Georgia State Prison in Reidsville, Georgia. This facility, known for housing some of the state's most notorious criminals, became David's new home, a stark contrast to the life of luxury and success he once enjoyed. Georgia State Prison, often referred to simply as Reidsville, is one of the oldest and most secure correctional facilities in the state. Established in 1937, it has a long history of holding individuals convicted of the most serious crimes. The prison is located in a remote area, surrounded by dense forests and farmland, emphasizing the isolation and severity of its environment. The prison is designed to hold approximately 1,500 inmates, with a high-security perimeter featuring multiple layers of fencing, surveillance cameras, and armed guards. The facility is divided into various units, including maximum security sections where inmates like David, convicted of violent crimes, are housed. These units are designed to minimize the risk of violence and ensure the safety of both the inmates and the prison staff. Life in Georgia State Prison is harsh and regimented. Inmates follow a strict daily schedule that includes limited time outside their cells, closely monitored recreation periods, and regimented meal times. The prison offers some educational and vocational programs aimed at rehabilitation, but for someone like David, serving a life sentence without parole, these opportunities are limited. The conditions at Reidsville are challenging. The facility is known for its strict discipline and the often overcrowded living conditions. Inmates must navigate a complex social hierarchy, where tensions can run high, and survival often depends on one's ability to adapt to the harsh realities of prison life.